The Glacier National Park rangers thought it was a cloud at first, until they realized the triangle over Lake McDonald was too sharp, too silent, and too still. Two rangers were on routine patrol along the shoreline. Both had worked the park long enough to recognize anything in the sky or on the ground. Aircraft from the nearby towns, the familiar sound of touring helicopters, even the way starlight reflects across still water. None of that matched what they saw. The first sign was the silence, not the normal nighttime quiet, a deeper one. It settled over the lake in a way that made the rangers look up before they knew why. That was when they noticed the patch of sky that did not belong. A triangular shape hung above the center of the lake, not sharp-edged, not glowing, just darker than the night around it. The stars behind it were gone, not blocked by cloud, not dimmed by haze, simply removed. The craft did not tilt or blink or hum. It sat perfectly still. One ranger pointed his light at the water. The beam reached only a short distance before fading into open darkness. The lake was flat, calm, cold. No ripple, no breeze, no disturbance. The triangle hovered above it without stirring the surface. It was Dale who suggested filming it. He was steady by nature, not easily rattled. If he wanted video, the situation was already past normal. Both rangers activated their body cameras. Then they took out their phones, aiming up. The screens captured the shape for a few seconds, a faint outline of a triangle against a darker sky. Then both screens froze, not the phones shutting down, not low battery, just a single locked frame with no movement. When they closed the camera apps and reopened them, the live view was black. The stars were gone. Even the shoreline lights behind them failed to appear. The rangers lowered their phones and looked with their eyes again. The craft was still there. A faint light began to appear on the water directly below the object. It grew slowly, widening in a perfect circle, not a beam from above, not a reflection, more like a glow rising from the lake bed. The water remained unmoved, completely flat. The light spread without creating a single wave. One ranger reached for the radio. It clicked once, a small burst of static, then went dead. Not a lost signal, not a call blocked by terrain. The device simply shut itself off. The triangle started moving. It drifted sideways across the lake with no change in height or angle. No evidence of propulsion, no sound. The light on the water remained directly beneath it, gliding the same way, smooth and controlled. When the craft passed over a small inlet where boats docked in summer, the water still did not react. The rangers followed along the shore, keeping the craft in sight. They spoke only when necessary. Dale said they should call it in again. The other ranger tried the radio a second time. It powered on for less than a second before dying again. The triangle slowed near the far end of the lake. It hovered for a moment above the darkest water, then rotated without turning. The entire object shifted orientation, like someone rotating a shape on a computer screen. It faced the opposite direction, with no visible motion. Then the light on the lake blinked out. Not faded, not flickered, just gone. The craft did not leave quickly. It rose a few feet, drifted sideways again, then ascended on a slow vertical path. As it climbed, the stars it had blocked reappeared one by one. A faint outline remained visible until it merged with the rest of the night sky. Then it was gone. The radio came back to life immediately. Clear tone, strong signal, no interference. The rangers did not think that was a coincidence. They reported the sighting. Dispatch told them to return to the station. When they arrived, two officials were waiting. Not from the park, not from any office the rangers recognized. The officials asked to see the footage. The rangers played their body camera recordings. The videos showed the shoreline, the lake, and the sky exactly as they had seen it, except for one detail. The triangle was not there. The glow on the lake was not there. The sky in the recording was open and clear. The officials asked to see their phones. Both phones had corrupted video files. Only black screens and locked frames remained. The officials told the rangers to delete everything. They were told to forget the event. They were told not to discuss it again. The rangers complied. They said nothing in their reports. They said nothing to the other staff. But they both remembered the same detail clearly. When the craft hovered above the lake, the water did not move at all. Nothing that size should leave the surface untouched. And nothing that silent should have appeared without warning in one of the quietest parts of the park. The officials stayed longer than expected. They asked the rangers to walk them through the patrol step by step, even the parts that had nothing to do with the sky. They wanted to know where the rangers stood when they first saw the craft, where the phones failed, where the radios cut out, and how far the craft moved before it disappeared. They were specific about distances, angles, and timelines, but not once did they ask what the craft looked like. That stood out to both rangers. When the questions were over, the officials left without giving instructions beyond their earlier warning. They drove off in a vehicle that did not belong to the park fleet. No markings, no identifying features. The rangers did not see them again. For 2 days, the park operated as usual. Routine patrols, campsite checks, trail maintenance. The rangers worked their shifts and said nothing, but both of them found reasons to avoid the lake. They did not discuss that choice, but it showed in their scheduling notes. Morning patrols shifted to the opposite side of the valley. Night patrols changed routes quietly. Nobody questioned it. This time of year, rangers adjusted their duties often. On the third night, the silence returned. Dale was the first to notice. He was doing a sweep along a trail several miles from the lake. It was late, around the same time the craft appeared. He paused and realized that every natural sound had stopped. No wind through the trees. No water moving in the creek beside the trail. Not even a distant owl. Just stillness. He reached for his radio. It clicked once and shut off. He stayed still for nearly a minute, waiting to hear if something else was moving nearby. Nothing did. The silence did not break. It held steady, dense and heavy like before. He turned and headed back toward the road. He moved at a fast walk, not running, because running in the dark on uneven ground is its own danger. He kept checking the sky through breaks in the trees. All he saw were stars. When he reached the service road, the radio came back online. A clean tone, the same as last time. He called the station immediately. Dispatch answered, unaware that anything had been wrong. The second ranger had a similar experience that same night. He had been assigned to check an overlook on the opposite side of the park. He stepped out of the truck and sensed something was off before he knew why. The overlook usually caught strong winds rolling down the mountain, but the air was still. He turned his head slowly, looking across the open sky. No object this time. No glow on any lake. Just quiet. He tried his radio and got nothing. He tried his phone and saw a black screen where the camera feed should have been. The silence lingered for several minutes. Then it lifted. The phone feed returned. The radio made a small chirp. The wind started again like someone had released pressure. He logged the incident privately, keeping details minimal. He did not want the officials to return. The next day, both rangers met in the break room, without planning to. They sat across from each other, neither speaking at first. Then one asked the question that had been sitting in both their minds. Was the craft still here? It was not a wild idea. The silence seemed to follow a pattern. Late night, clear sky, same valley, same disturbances. They decided to run a quiet patrol back to the lake that night. Not an official sweep, not something logged, just two rangers checking a familiar area the way they would on any other routine night. No cameras, no phones, no body cams, since those recordings turned useless the first time anyway. Just two sets of eyes. They left the station late, walking the same trail they had walked the night of the sighting. The temperature had dropped again. The sky was clear. The lake was flat and dark. When they reached the open stretch of shoreline, they stopped. The stars above them were normal, but the reflection on the water was not. Starlight usually scatters across the lake in thin streaks. That night, it did not scatter. It pooled. A single tight cluster of bright reflections clung to the surface in an oval shape near the middle of the lake. No wind disturbed it. No ripple spread out from it. The shape stayed fixed, like something beneath the water was catching starlight and holding it still. One ranger took a step closer. The reflection tightened, not dimmed, tightened. The cluster of light drew in, narrowing its shape like it was being compressed. Dale said the words neither one had spoken. "It is right under us." They backed away from the water slowly, eyes fixed on the reflection. The cluster of light pulsed once, a small contraction, barely noticeable except that both rangers saw it at the same time. Then the silence returned. The woods behind them went dead still. Their ears popped slightly like pressure had changed in the valley. The rangers readied their radios. Neither device responded. The cluster of light on the lake grew brighter, not glowing through the water, but reflecting off something just beneath the surface, something broad and smooth. They took another step back. The reflection tightened again. Then the lake shook. Not a wave, not a splash, a vibration, like something large had shifted just under the surface. The rangers did not wait to see what rose from the water. They left the shoreline and headed for the trail without looking back. When they reached the tree line, the silence ended all at once. Crickets returned. Wind stirred the branches. The normal world resumed as if nothing had happened. The radios came back online at the same moment. The rangers did not report the incident, because this time they both understood something they had not understood before. The craft had not left the park. It had gone into the lake, and whatever it was doing down there, it was not finished. The rangers did not return to the lake for several days, not because they were told to avoid it, but because both understood something had changed. Whatever that triangular craft was, it no longer behaved like an object in the sky. It was now part of the lake itself. Whether submerged or hidden, neither ranger knew, but the pattern was obvious. When it moved, the valley went silent. When it rose, the water reacted without motion. They waited for someone to follow up. Another visit from the officials, a call from the district office, a memo, anything. Nothing came. Routine patrols resumed. Tourists trickled out as the season ended. The staff prepared for winter operations. It would have been easy to think the incident was over, that whatever they saw had finished whatever it came to do. Then the fish kills started, small at first. A handful of trout washed up on one corner of the shore. Rangers chalked it up to temperature changes. Happens every season. Then more fish appeared, perfectly intact. No wounds, no signs of disease. Their bodies had stiffened in unusual ways, almost curled, as if they had seized up mid-swim. The biologist on staff examined a few. She noticed no toxins, no infection, nothing chemical. She said they looked like they had been exposed to sudden pressure or rapid displacement, something that compressed them from the inside without rupturing anything. The two rangers exchanged a look at that explanation. Neither spoke. 2 nights later, the silence returned. Dale was in the station writing an incident log when he felt the air shift. Nothing dramatic, just a subtle change. The building's heater hummed normally, but outside the sound of wind stopped. Every ambient noise ceased. The valley went quiet again. He checked the time. Almost the same minute as the original sighting. At the same moment, the other ranger was out near a trailhead. He heard the silence too. 1 second of normal night sounds. The next second, nothing. His radio stayed on this time, but static filled the channel for several seconds before clearing again. Both rangers met near the lake without contacting each other. They converged instinctively, drawn by the same absence of sound. The lake was darker than usual. Even with starlight, the surface looked as if it was swallowing the sky rather than reflecting it. A thin fog hung close to the water, not drifting, not rising, just sitting there like it was waiting. They approached the shoreline cautiously. Neither spoke. The silence was too heavy for conversation. The reflection returned. Not starlight this time. A faint white line traced across the water, in a long arc. Not sharp, not bright, but definite. It reminded both of them of the circular glow from before, only stretched and distant, as if the craft had changed position beneath the surface. The line shifted, slowly, steadily. like something moving along the lake floor. Then it stopped. A vibration ran through the ground under the rangers' boots. Not enough to shake them off balance, but enough to feel in bone rather than ear. They stepped back from the shoreline. The white line flickered once, then went dim. A moment later, their radios chirped with a brief burst of coded static. Not random noise, a rhythm. Short, short, long, short. Then nothing. The radios clicked off. The lake surface bulged. No splash, no waves. Just a slight rise like something enormous had pressed up from beneath but had not broken through. The bulge lasted only a second, then flattened again. That was when lights appeared on the far shoreline. Not from the craft, from vehicles, trucks, dark-colored, no markings, headlights off. They moved slowly toward the water, then stopped in a line. 3 of them, 2 more behind. Doors opened. People stepped out, not hurried, not armed visibly, just purposeful. They walked toward the lake carrying equipment the rangers had never seen before. Long rectangular cases, devices with antennas. Something like ground sensors, but heavier. The rangers stayed hidden among the trees. They knew what would happen if they stepped out. Questions they could not answer. Orders they would not want to hear. The people placed their equipment along the shore and pointed several devices at the lake. One of the devices emitted a low hum, too low to hear clearly, but strong enough to vibrate in the chest. The white line under the water vanished instantly. The lake went dark. The silence lifted. Voices from the crew carried faintly across the water. Indistinct words, short commands. Someone telling another to check readings. Someone else asking for coordinates. Calm, practiced tone. None of them looked surprised. None of them looked confused. The rangers watched from behind a cluster of trees, knowing without being told that these people had been here before. Maybe not at this lake, maybe not on this night, but somewhere. They carried themselves like individuals who had dealt with this kind of thing already. As the crew worked, one of the devices spiked with a brief flash of light. The crew reacted quickly, adjusting something, lowering something else. They worked silently for another minute, then began packing up. The trucks left without using headlights. The equipment was gone. No trace. The lake remained quiet. The rangers stayed where they were until the night returned to normal. Only then did they step back onto the trail. Neither said a word on the walk out, because both understood the same thing. Whatever was in that lake, the officials knew about it, and they were not trying to stop it. They were trying to contain it. The rangers returned to the station separately. Neither one logged the incident. Neither one called it in. They both knew what would happen if they did. More unmarked trucks. More questions with no answers. Another order to erase their records. They had already been through that once. They were not interested in a second round. For the next few days, the park carried on like nothing had happened. Visitors took photos along the overlooks. Anglers cast lines into the same water that had risen in a way no water should rise. Kayakers headed out from the launch near dawn, never sensing anything beneath them. The surface looked the same, cold, flat, ordinary. But the rangers noticed things, small things at first. A buoy near the far end of the lake drifted several feet overnight, even though the water was calm. A pair of mallards flew low over the water, then abruptly veered off for no reason. A section of shoreline where fish often gathered was empty for 2 mornings straight. None of these things were alarming on their own. Animals move, water shifts, but both rangers watched the patterns, and each pattern pointed to the same truth. Something was still under Lake McDonald, something that did not behave like anything natural. The silence returned again on the 7th night. This time, only one ranger was on duty. The other had been assigned to a different part of the park. The ranger on duty noticed the same heavy stillness settle over the landscape. It was the same time as the previous events. Same temperature drop. Same sense that the valley had been emptied of normal life. He walked out to the loading dock behind the station. The lake was across the valley and not visible from there, but he felt the shift in the air anyway. A pressure, a quiet tremor in the chest. The kind you feel before a storm or after a deep explosion. His radio cracked once, static rising in a short pulse. Not voice, not interference. A signal. The same pattern as before. Short, short, long, short. He did not know if it meant anything. He did not want to know. He stepped back inside the station and waited, listening. The silence lasted longer this time, nearly 20 minutes. When it broke, the heater clicked on. A deer moved somewhere outside, and the radio returned to normal. He considered calling the other ranger, but did not. Neither of them needed to say what they already understood. The craft was not leaving. 2 nights later, the ranger assigned to the other side of the valley came across something on patrol. A section of trail near a cliff overlook had fresh dust scattered across it. Not unusual, but the dust had been disturbed in a pattern that did not match boots or wildlife. Smooth curved lines, almost like arcs or impressions from a single large surface. No footprint, no tire mark. Something bigger, something that had hovered close to the ground and brushed the dust without weight. He photographed it with a personal camera, not a work device, his own. For a moment, the image was clear. Then the screen distorted. The photo grayed out. When he looked again, the file was gone. That same night, the lake brightened again. No craft rose. No triangle appeared. Only the glow, exactly like before. A soft circle of light rising from beneath the surface. 2 maintenance workers driving along a road near the water saw it. They reported it to the rangers, unsure what they had witnessed. The rangers took the report but filed it under weather anomaly, the same way they had been told to file the others. But the glow stayed longer this time, nearly 3 minutes. Then it sank slowly back into darkness. The officials returned the next day. 2 trucks again, same unmarked look, same quiet approach. They spoke with no one except the station supervisor. The meeting lasted 15 minutes. Afterward, the supervisor called both rangers into his office. He told them that any reports involving unusual light activity, radio interruptions, or unexplained stillness should be routed directly to him. No exceptions, no written logs, no digital files, no photos. Any staff member who documented such events independently would be violating policy. The supervisor did not explain why. He only said the words slowly, making sure they understood. Leave it alone. The rangers walked out of the office without speaking. That night, neither of them went near the lake. 3 weeks passed. The tourists left for the season. Snow began to creep down the mountains. The lake froze at the edges in thin sheets. Winter came in early, quieting the valley under its own weight. For a while, the silence felt normal, the kind that happens every year. Then the rangers noticed something unusual on one of their routine shifts. A ring had formed in the ice near the center of the lake, a perfect circle where the ice had melted clean through. Steam rose faintly from the opening, even though the lake was not geothermal. The water under the ring was dark and perfectly still. The rangers stood at a distance and watched it. No noise came from the ring, no light, no movement, just a hole in the ice, perfectly round, perfectly centered. The officials returned the next morning. They fenced off the entire shoreline. The park listed the closure as winter hazard. The public never heard anything else. The rangers kept working season after season, making sure not to look too long at the lake on quiet nights. Neither of them ever camped near it again. Neither of them took fishermen out there after dark. Neither of them mentioned the triangular craft again, even in private. But both noticed the same detail every winter after that. The ice never froze across that circle. Not once. Even in the coldest months. Something under that water kept it open. Something that had never left.